At 7:24 that morning, Officer Travis Calder's mobile terminal still marked the county burglary bulletin as unread. 1 minute later, his field note contained the phrase, "Possible bulletin match." Malcolm Greer knew nothing about either entry. He was inside Maple and Iron Diner, drawing a blue line through a paragraph of a public safety bill while his coffee cooled beside a slice of cherry pie. Malcolm had left a private breakfast near the state capitol earlier than expected. His committee session would not begin for another hour, and Maple and Iron sat close enough to the highway that he could eat without calling his driver. His sister had texted him before he arrived, "Remember the cardiologist appointment, and stop pretending pie counts as breakfast." Malcolm had replied with a photograph of the cherry slice, and the words, "Medical advice received." Now his phone rested beside a leather briefcase. The draft legislation in front of him dealt with body camera preservation, audit access, and the retention of digital records after a detention. One sentence had been circled twice. A recording must be preserved when physical control begins, not when an officer later decides an incident was important. Around him, the diner followed its ordinary Saturday rhythm. A white businessman stood near the window, speaking loudly into a headset. Officer Calder, seated at the counter, never asked why he kept watching the parking lot. A retired couple had finished eating half an hour earlier. They continued occupying a booth while sharing the newspaper. Nobody asked them to move. A construction foreman entered wearing muddy boots and a jacket bearing an out-of-county company logo. Calder looked at him, nodded, and returned to his coffee. Then he noticed Malcolm. Charcoal suit, polished shoes, Capital District plates on the black sedan outside. A black man sitting alone, with official-looking papers spread across the table. Calder stopped stirring his coffee. The county had experienced several break-ins during the previous week. He knew that much from roll call. He had not opened the bulletin sent to his cruiser terminal that morning, but he remembered the lieutenant saying the suspects were mobile and were believed to be watching expensive homes. Calder had been working since before dawn. His shift was supposed to end after breakfast. He had also received a counseling notice 2 days earlier for failing to document the legal basis of a pedestrian stop. He told himself that experienced officers noticed things before software confirmed them. Frank Bell, the diner manager, saw Calder studying Malcolm. "Just a customer, Travis." Calder adjusted the radio on his shoulder. "I'm going to talk to him." Malcolm saw the officer's shadow cross the draft before he looked up. He capped his pen and placed it beside the bill. "Morning," Calder said. "Good morning, officer." Calder glanced at the papers, then through the window at the sedan. "That your vehicle?" "Yes." "What brings you out here?" "Breakfast." Calder waited as though another answer should follow. Malcolm touched the handle of his coffee cup, but did not lift it. "Is there a problem with the car? We've had burglary activity in the executive neighborhoods. What observed conduct connects me to it?" Calder's expression changed. He had expected a name, an address, perhaps an apology for being unfamiliar. Instead, Malcolm had asked for the step between suspicion and authority. "I need to see identification." "For what legal purpose?" "This is an active investigation." "What description are you comparing me against?" Emily Ross stopped beside the coffee station with a towel in her hand. She had served Malcolm 10 minutes earlier. His card payment and order ticket were still available in the register archive. Calder placed his palm on the table. "Sir, give me your identification." The coffee jumped in its cup. A dark stream crossed the saucer and reached the draft legislation, soaking the sentence Malcolm had circled. For a moment, Malcolm looked only at the spreading stain. His patience slipped. "Read your own bulletin before you use it on me." Calder's shoulders squared. "Stand up." Malcolm drew one breath and brought his voice back under control. "Am I being detained?" "You are now." "For what offense?" "Failure to cooperate with a burglary investigation." "I have asked what conduct you observed." "I have not interfered with anything." Calder reached for Malcolm's wrist. Malcolm stood before the officer pulled him from the booth. He kept his hands open and away from his briefcase. "I will comply with physical commands. I do not consent to a search." Calder turned him toward the edge of the table and closed the handcuffs. Emily lowered her towel. Frank remained behind the counter. Neither moved closer. Calder keyed his radio. "Dispatch, show one detained at Maple and Iron. Possible burglary bulletin match. Subject refused identification and became obstructive." In the cruiser outside, the bulletin remained unopened. Emily looked at the coffee-stained papers. She lifted the order ticket from the register printer and placed it inside a clear takeout sleeve. Then she slid Malcolm's wet draft in behind it. She did not yet know who he was. She only knew the officer's radio description did not match what she had watched. Officer Owen Hale arrived several minutes later. He was younger than Calder and still within his first year of independent patrol. He found Malcolm cuffed beside the cruiser, while Calder typed on the mobile terminal. "What happened?" Hale asked. "Possible bulletin match. Refused identification. Obstruction." Hale leaned toward the terminal. The bulletin icon still carried a gray unread marker. "You haven't opened it." Calder clicked the file. The bulletin described a white cargo van connected to rear entry burglaries after midnight. 2 suspects had been recorded by private security cameras. Both were described as white men in work jackets. Hale read it twice. This doesn't match him. Calder looked toward Malcolm. He refused identification during an active investigation. You called it a match before you opened the description. Calder's jaw tightened. Do you want to correct me in front of a detainee? Hale glanced at Malcolm's wrists. Then, at Calder's rank chevrons. He had requested assignment to this district because Calder was considered an officer who could teach him how to survive probation. Hale lowered his voice. The bulletin is a white van. Calder closed the file. We can sort it out at the station. That was Hale's opportunity to stop the transport. He let it pass. Malcolm turned his head toward him. Officer Hale, the screen has already answered the question. Hale did not respond. During the drive, Malcolm faced the body camera mounted on Calder's chest. The burglary bulletin was opened after I was detained. The field note existed before the description was read. My identification remains in the inside pocket of my jacket. S. Calder gripped the steering wheel. Stop narrating. I am preserving the sequence. At the Oakmont station, Sergeant Nolan Price looked up from the booking desk and studied the wet stain across Malcolm's suit. Charge? Obstruction. Possible burglary involvement. Price looked at Calder. Possible based on what? Active bulletin. Hale entered through the side door carrying Malcolm's wallet and the plastic sleeve Emily had given him. He placed both on the counter. The bulletin does not match, he said. It describes a white cargo van and 2 white male suspects operating after midnight. Price opened the wallet. The state seal appeared first. State Senator Malcolm Greer, Chair, Judiciary and Public Safety Committee. Hale's hand remained on the counter. Calder stared at the card, then looked toward the booking camera. His certainty had begun to break into smaller calculations. Captain Laura Denton arrived from the administrative wing, with one side of her uniform jacket still unbuttoned. Senator Greer, we can clear this up in my office. Malcolm looked at the booking screen. First, classify whether I am detained, arrested, or free to leave. Denton hesitated. You are temporarily detained while we review the circumstances. Then preserve the terminal audit trail, dispatch audio, body camera file, booking video, and every revision to the incident narrative. Calder stepped forward. Captain, he refused a lawful identification request. Malcolm looked at him. You entered a match before you knew what the bulletin said. My title did not create that timestamp. Denton instructed Price to remove the handcuffs. Malcolm flexed his fingers once after the metal opened. He did not ask for an apology. He used his phone to call Legislative Counsel, gave the department name and incident location, and requested a preservation notice to the county, the body camera host, and the enterprise software vendor operating the mobile terminal system. His position opened the review quickly. It did not decide the result. Before the end of his shift, Calder submitted a report stating that Malcolm had resembled subjects connected to a burglary bulletin, refused a lawful demand for identification, and required detention to resolve the risk. Hale read the draft. You wrote that he resembled the subjects. He matched the behavior profile. The bulletin does not contain a behavior profile. Calder moved the report closer to himself. I made a field judgment. Sign the supplemental section. Hale signed only his arrival time. He left the narrative box blank. 2 days later, the department's compliance room held representatives from Internal Affairs, County Council, the Police Standards Office, and the software vendor responsible for the cruiser terminals. Malcolm sat at the end of the table with the stained bill draft inside an evidence sleeve. Emily's order ticket was clipped behind it. Hale sat near the wall. Calder sat across from the Internal Affairs investigator. The vendor's records custodian displayed the mobile terminal audit trail. She explained that patrol officers could add field notes and amend narrative text. Department administrators could authorize corrections. Neither group could alter the server-generated time, showing when a bulletin was delivered, opened, or acknowledged. Those events were written automatically to the vendor's compliance ledger, preserved for 7 years, and copied during the nightly reconciliation process. Once synchronized, the event sequence could not be replaced. A later correction appeared as a new entry with a new timestamp. The first line appeared on the screen. Burglary bulletin delivered. Status, unread. The custodian read the time. 7:24 and 18 seconds. The second line showed Calder's field note. Possible bulletin match. 7:25 and 6 seconds. The third marked the start of Malcolm's detention. 7:28 and 41 seconds. The fourth showed the bulletin being opened. 7:31 and 12 seconds. The investigator looked at Calder. Your report says you compared Senator Greer with the bulletin before requesting identification. I was familiar with the general circumstances. You described him as a bulletin match. I used shorthand. Before reading the race, vehicle, number of suspects, or time of offense. Calder shifted in his chair. The area had experienced burglaries. That explains why you were alert. It does not explain the entry. Calder looked toward Hale. My backup understood the safety concern. Hale's shoulders moved slightly. I understood it after he said it, Hale replied. The screen did not support it. The investigator displayed Calder's report beside the audit trail. His written sequence placed the bulletin first, Malcolm's refusal second, and detention third. The software sequence placed Calder's conclusion first, detention second, and the bulletin last. Emily confirmed that Malcolm had been eating, paying, and working quietly before Calder approached. Her register ticket established that he was a customer, but the investigator made the distinction clear. The receipt is corroboration. The audit ledger is the controlling record. Captain Denton asked Calder why he had not corrected the report after the mismatch was identified. Calder's answer took several seconds. I believe the detention could still be justified. Under what offense? He looked down at his copy. No offense had been entered before the handcuffs closed. Calder was removed from patrol authority that afternoon. His enterprise access to field contact reports and bulletin classifications was suspended while the department completed its disciplinary process. The final order terminated him for unsupported detention and false reporting. His certification was referred to the State Standards Board, which prevented him from moving quietly to another department while the case remained under review. Hale received a shorter suspension, mandatory intervention training, and 6 months without solo patrol authority. His testimony helped correct the record. It did not erase the moment he read the mismatch and allowed the cruiser to leave. Captain Denton retained command but lost sole authority to close digital record complaints. Every such finding now required an external compliance signature. The software change followed the same week. An officer could no longer select bulletin match until the bulletin had been opened and its vehicle, suspect, and time fields acknowledged. If detention began while the bulletin remained unread, the system generated an automatic audit alert and preserved the related body camera file without waiting for an officer or supervisor to request it. The field that Calder had used too early was no longer available too early. Malcolm did not add his own case to the public safety bill. He considered it, then decided the law should not depend on whether the person in handcuffs held office. He replaced the coffee-stained page with a clean copy, but kept the original in his desk. Several weeks later, he returned to Maple and Iron before another committee session. Emily brought black coffee and cherry pie. Your sister still objecting to breakfast? She asked. Consistently. Outside, a county officer sat in a cruiser, reviewing a vehicle bulletin. On the terminal, the match field remained gray until each description box had been opened. Malcolm folded a paper napkin around half the pie to take to his sister. The system recorded the officer's verification. Only then did the field unlock. At what moment should Officer Hale have stopped following Calder and taken responsibility for the record himself? This story is fictional,